shaping up Africa policy. A few days ago, I was reading an article about European Union and Africa, long-standing strategic partnership, talking about prosperity and security as closely interlinked. The partnership between Africa and Europe is coming of an age. They want to take Africa's future in its own hand, which is not a bad thing. But to base setting up Africa policy in promoting women and create jobs for the youth, drive digital innovation, promote sustainable economic growth and opportunity is a nice move, but that alone cannot solve Africa problem. It is easy to say we want to silence the guns in Africa. It's a good process, but that is a dream that seems not to live to its promise simply because European Union left its main path of human rights and fighting corruption out of its relationship with Africa. They don't even mention war on corruption. As long as they are doing business with dictators in Africa and keep African refugees out of Europe, they can do anything to maintain their relationship with vested dictators in Africa. A friend was telling me that the war on human rights and corruption is a thing of the past. Even if they stop giving money to dictators, it is the ordinary people who are going to suffer. They will keep on giving African dictators development help as long as it's beneficial to both players. Not long ago, African Union and the European Union held a meeting to redefine cooperation between the two continents and clearing a way for European Union and African Union summit in Brussels in October in order to turn this aspiration into reality. We all know that our world is changing rapidly and it is becoming more complex every day. Of course, it is important to join hands in fighting poverty in Africa. That one I agree with you completely. We need to join hands. But living human rights, corruption, democratic process out of it is a mistake. Let me remind the two players that refusing to put human rights, war on corruption on agenda for a sustaining development goal for the two partners is a big mistake. Because whatever you try to achieve without solving human rights and corruption that is eating up African Union, you will not silence the gun in Africa. Instead, we shall hear more gunshots around Africa. I do believe that we all need stronger partnership in order to make key challenges that faces our country today, whether it's climate change, digital transformation, or uplifting our youth, fight inequality, which is caused by corruption, and fair distribution of wealth in Africa by supporting dictators in power. You are not alleviating suffering of refugee, displaced persons, and victims of violation of human rights. You are creating more refugees. It is time the European Union should reevaluate its policy on Africa and put human rights, fighting corruption, above playing diplomatic approach and shaking hands with dictators and those who refuse to respect democratic approach in Africa. If we forget human rights, we forget war on corruption, we do away with democratic process, it will lead us into a dark hole where sooner or later the younger generation will look for revolution, will look for some changes to make them feel that they're part of Africa. We all know that economic growth in Africa is moving in the right direction. We are going to be a home for majority of the world's fastest growing economies in the coming years. But it should not be on the cost of human rights, corruption. We all want a fair play, so that we can develop Africa to become a peaceful state. We know that more investors are moving to Africa. And we are looking for more to join soon. This should all be based on respect for human rights, war on corruption, and supporting a democratic process if we want to silence the gun in Africa. Any investor coming to Africa should respect those 3 pillars of development. If we want to embark on fair play in order to maintain that relationship between the European Union and African Union. When you support dictators who violate human rights in Africa, you are then an enemy of the people. When you support a country that does not respect democracy, you are the enemy of the people. We can improve business environment, digital revolution, when we respect the three pillars I mentioned: human rights, democracy, and zero tolerance on corruption. Then we can build a meaningful partnership with the people of Africa. You may say that free trade agreement adds more effect to the trend of creating a market of 1.2 billion people. But we need to understand that whatever we do in order to succeed, we need democracy. Without democracy, all those investments we are talking about, all those investors we are talking about becomes irrelevant, because most of them are there to fill up their pocket, earn enough money, and ship it out of the country for their own benefits. When you are running a company, when you're an investor, you want to make profit. And whoever cross your path and want to stop you from generating money, you will deal with them accordingly. Respect to human rights is the base for maintaining just ambitious goal. We all know that you are our friends. We all know that you are the largest trading partners with Africa. We all know that your investment in development assistance and security is good for developing Africa. But let's be honest. Let's be honest. Many people in Africa are worried about your support for dictators in the Horn of Africa. But let's be honest, let's be sure, let's be honest with one another. It is not yet too late. You can turn around and shape up your policy on Africa. We don't have to travel through darkness just because we close our eyes to dictatorship, human rights abuses, corruptions, simply because we want to defend our interest. Investment in Africa, let me be clear. Every time I hear that we support Africa solution to African problems, that sounds romantic. Our problem is lack of democracy, human rights abuses, trafficking, corruption. By supporting African solution for African problems, you are supporting African dictator. You're supporting dictatorship in Africa. Problems. And if that is what we're going to do, And that is what the relationship between the European Union and Africa is all about. Then we are moving in the wrong direction. We all agree, we all know that we need the support of European Union. We need partnership with European Union. We need to play the same game as any other countries, because a country cannot develop alone. A continent cannot develop alone, but it should be based on fair play, fair share. Not that I invest in Africa, I earn a lot of money out of it, and I don't even hear heifer. I don't see a heifer. We just close our eyes, because as long as the dictator is doing exactly what we want to do, then human rights, corruption, democracy become something of the past. We have seen a lot of those things happening in the Horn of Africa. We have dictators in Uganda. We have wars going on in Southern Sudan. We have African Union, which is fighting a war in Somalia all these years. It's being financed by you and the United Nations to fight a war that you don't want to send your people to do it. And then we say we are going to support African solution to African problems. That is not true. Because you, as the European Union, you could be so effective rather than spending all those money paying the African Union to go and recruit people's children and send them to Somalia to fight a war, not knowing whether they are going to come back alive or they are going to come back in boxes. And we call that supporting African solution to African problems. As I said before, it sounds very romantic. It sounds very romantic. But it raises a lot of questions to whether supporting African solution to an African problem is going to solve the problem in Somalia. It has failed. The problem is there, year in, year out. And we are investing a lot of money through United Nations, paying those soldiers of fortune, those kids who are recruited through those dictators and sent to fight a war in Somalia. and the war seemed not to be ending. And every time, some of those leaders, they say, listen, I am going to remove my troops out of Somalia, and you just pour more money in. Say, don't. We will give you money. Do whatever you can, but let them fight there. But we in the European Union, we are not sending our children to fight that war in Somalia. We are not sending our children to knock one another out in Southern Sudan. When you look at Southern Sudan, if the European Union really want to support African solutions to African problems, you should be active and you should participate in person. You would have solved that problem already. But that problem in Somalia, in Southern Sudan, and in other parts of Africa is not going away, simply because of our support for dictators in Africa. You see, when we play the games of saying that we support a strong man of Africa, he's a strong man of Africa, it does not matter whether you tear gas your people, whether you beat up your people, whether you kill them, as long as it's not in our backyard, we are okay with it, because it's something that is happening far away. If we have to pour money to support refugees that are flocking into Uganda from Congo, from Sudan, or the Somalians who are running away asking for asylum in these countries, we'll pour money. You keep them there. Keep them near to the problems. We don't want them to cross the European frontiers, because we don't need it. That is not a way to silence the gun in Africa. When you give one side of the coin more power, more money, more weapons to kill one another, and then you turn and say, yeah, we are supporting African solution to African problems. You cannot support African solution to African problems. If you want to solve that problem, first of all, get rid of dictators. Stay with human rights and zero tolerance on corruption. But as long as we just talk for the sake of talking, we just talk because we know that politics is a gray area. You say one thing in the daylight, and at night you do something else. That is what is happening with that strategic partnership of ours. We have a lot of people investing in Africa today. If that investment was to benefit both sides, I would support it 100%. But as long as that support for African solution to African problem is only benefiting dictators and you, the person lending money or giving development help to dictators, it does not solve any problem at all. I hope if the European Union want to shape up Africa policy, it should go back to the basis of respect for human rights, developing a proper democratic process, and zero tolerance on corruption. It is very easy if you want to do it. You tell these dictators, either you transform your democratic process, respect human rights. If you don't, we don't give you money. If you don't, we are not going to support you with any development fund. Whatever we give you, it should be based on human rights, democracy, and zero tolerance on corruption. We started well, but then we lost our way. We used to tell them, say, listen, either you respect these 3 pillars or we don't help you. But today we have greedy people who keep on saying, no, that is the thing of the past. As long as we are benefiting from it, we are going to give them the money anyway. Let they, the African, look for a solution to their own problems. So when you tell a dictator, you say, you are a dictator, I leave your country to you, do whatever you want to do. Then you get the taste of tear gas. And then you ask yourself, where are they buying the tear gas from? Where are they buying those vehicles who are used for tear gassing our own African people from? Where do they buy the guns that kill the people of Africa? They buy it from us in Europe, in different parts of the world, because we have the investors who are there just to look for money. You give me money, I'll sell you weapons. And with those weapons, you can oppress your own people. With those weapons, you can do whatever you want to do. I'll close my eyes. I can issue hard statement about human rights, about democracy, about corruption, but that is for your ears only. That is for people to listen to. But I am not going to punish you for whatever you want to do. If you're killing yourself, it's fine with me, because that is an African solution to an African problem. You kill yourself, but don't bring it here. Don't allow your people to come to Europe. Ask for asylum. You keep them there in your own continent. Whatever you do with them is not our concern. So, ladies and gentlemen, strategic partnership between 2 continents should be based on human rights, democracy, and zero tolerance on corruption. I hope some days the European Union will change their policy and do the right thing.